For 10 years, the U.S. government had been trying to catch terrorist number one, Osama Bin Laden. However, each time, the leader of al-Qaeda managed to escape from the hands of justice. In September 2010, CIA agents finally had a chance to eliminate Osama. Terrorist number one directed al-Qaeda operations through indirect emails. Bin Laden did not use the internet or mobile phone after the events of 1998, when American intelligence services tracked him through satellite communications and bombed the base where he was. Bin Laden typed messages on a personal computer, and after that, they were saved to a USB flash card, which was then given to a trusted person, a courier, whose job was to find a way to send it to the right people. The American intelligence service was able to find one such courier. Unaware of surveillance, he led the CIA to Bin Laden's hideout in a suburb of Abbottabad, Pakistan. The main task of intelligence was to identify the person living in that shelter. Was that really the same culprit responsible for the 9/11 tragedy? They equipped a safe place to monitor the hideout, and after half a year, with the help of reconnaissance drones, they identified the leader of al-Qaeda. In March 2010, U.S. President Barack Obama met the commander of the Joint Special Operations Command, William McRaven, to discuss a plan to capture or eliminate bin Laden. One of the options was to bombard the house with the help of a B-2 Spirit. They could drop 32,900 kilogram bombs. But Obama rejected the plan due to potential civilian casualties and the inability to confirm afterward that bin Laden was indeed in the house. Another plan was to perform an attack together with Pakistani intelligence officers who would have been informed of the operation several hours in advance. However, this plan required additional training for the operatives, as well as more careful planning, which would entail a high probability of information leakage. As a result, the following plan of operation was approved. On May the 2nd, 2010, using stealth technology, two Black Hawk helicopters secretly crossed the Pakistani border. They carried two groups of DevGru fighters, 12 people each. Upon reaching bin Laden's hideout, the first group was to land in the courtyard and start the attack from the ground floor. The second group at that time would start the capture from the roof and conduct a sweep on the upper floors. It seemed that the plan was flawless. What could possibly go wrong? However, the weather interfered with the operation. As the helicopters hovered over the target, one of them was caught in a vortex ring caused by higher than expected temperatures and high fence walls. The pilot lost control. The helicopter hit one of the walls with its tail, and then the pilot landed in the yard, turning the helicopter on its side. The group had to urgently change the plan, unite, and storm the house from the first floor together. At about 1 p.m. local time, the operation began. The special forces blew up one of the walls of the building and broke through. They immediately came under fire. The same courier who had helped the CIA track down the hideout was now shooting at the operatives from the guest house. At the same time, the second group broke into the main building. They killed the courier's brother before he could get to a weapon, as well as the son of bin Laden, who tried to break through to the second floor. Upstairs, the operatives finally saw the target of that special operation. At the same time, bin Laden saw the operatives from the third floor. One of the commandos fired at him but missed, after which the terrorist ran into the room. The teams followed him. Upon breaking into the room, the group found the two wives of bin Laden who tried to cover him with their bodies. One of the women shouted something in Arabic and moved her hand. It could have been a move to use an explosive device, so one of the operatives immediately shot her in the leg, and the women were pushed aside. Immediately afterward, a second operative shot Osama first in the chest and then in the head. There was an AKS-74U submachine gun and a Makarov pistol in the room, and bin Laden could have used them to open fire or take one of his wives hostage. That's how the most dangerous terrorist in the world was eliminated. However, that didn't mean the special operation was over. The operatives needed to take the body of Bin Laden to confirm his identity. Some of the confirmation was conducted right there. Like Bin Laden, the corpse was of the same height, 1 meter 93 centimeters. The operatives didn't have a tape measure, so a commando of the same height laid down next to him, and they compared the height. Besides, a photo of the body handed over to CIA headquarters for facial recognition matched 95%. And one of the wives, after the murder, confirmed it was indeed Bin Laden. The commandos had to search the hideout and seize hard drives, flash drives, and documentation for further analysis. And only after that could they decide what to do with the crashed helicopter. After all, it had stealth technology, with the help of which the group passed unnoticed through the border of Pakistan. The technology could not have been left for study by another country's intelligence. Therefore, it was decided to blow up the helicopter. After that, a backup Black Hawk was called, which helped the group return from the combat mission. The Pakistani government raised fighter jets after they spotted something crossing their border. However, they got to the location of Bin Laden after the entire Special Forces group completed the mission and left. The attack on the hideout was supposed to last 30 minutes. Looking back at the unforeseen circumstances, the final 38 minutes the Special Forces actually needed seemed to be beyond the plan. What happened next? On the same day, at 11:35 p.m., U.S. President Barack Obama made a televised statement about eliminating Osama Bin Laden. And within a few minutes after the announcement, crowds of triumphant people gathered at the White House and the Pentagon. Twitter exploded with 5,100 messages per second at its peak. And what about the terrorist's body? After thorough identification of the body through DNA analysis in the laboratories of the Department of Defense and the CIA, a problem arose. No country in the world wanted to accept Bin Laden's body for burial. The reasons for this could be different. One of them is that no one wanted to turn their country and burial place into a kind of terrorist shrine. Therefore, the body was transferred to the aircraft carrier Carl Vinson and buried in the northern part of the Arabian Sea. All required Muslim religious ceremonies were performed. The body was washed, wrapped in a white sheet, and placed in a special weighted bag. The officer read religious commentaries translated into Arabic. After that, the body was placed on a tilted board, and the body went into the sea. In the last days of the Second World War, all the former greatness of the Third Reich was hidden in an underground bunker where Hitler attempted to give command of the defense of Berlin. What happened to the energetic leader who once hypnotized millions with his speeches, but in the end was forced to shoot himself in the head while sitting in a dungeon? In addition to the main version of Hitler's death, there are doubts about whether he actually died on April 30th, 1945, or whether his death was staged. The reason for these doubts is the difficulty in identifying the bodies found near the bunker. The fact is that before his death, Hitler ordered to burn his remains because he didn't want his enemies to abuse them. And although specialists from the USSR carried out the identification of the bodies back in Berlin, the public didn't really trust it. Rumors of Hitler's possible escape spread throughout the world. There were countless theories that he was hiding in Argentina, Brazil, or even at a secret underground base in Antarctica. However, in 2018, an examination was carried out under the guidance of the world-renowned forensic expert Professor Philippe Charlier. Using modern research methods, a group of scientists studied Hitler's teeth, which are stored in the archives of the FSB, and they concluded that those really did belong to the Third Reich dictator. Thanks to declassified documents, we'll restore the chronology of what happened to Adolf Hitler in the last hours of his life. In April 1945, the attack on Berlin began. Germany was between two fronts. They had lost most of their industrial resources and troops. However, the leadership showed a fanatical will and ordered the German troops to continue senseless resistance. The troops of the American army were advancing from west to east. They forced the Elbe, gaining a foothold in the western part of Berlin. From the east, south, and north, the city was surrounded by Soviet troops. April 16th. On the outskirts of Berlin, the largest shelling in the entire Second World War started. The defense of Berlin was divided into 9 sectors, 8 in a circle inside the city, and 1 in the center in the government quarter. Not only the military, but also units assembled from local teenagers and elderly men had already been thrown into the defense of the streets. The city was bombed by aircraft. By the end of April 19th, the 3rd defensive line was already broken through. From that moment on, the city was doomed to fall. Many German soldiers, realizing the inevitability of death, were trying to penetrate the West and surrender to the Americans. On the other hand, Hitler refused to sign the capitulation and finally moved to the Berlin bunker, where he organized his headquarters. From there, he continued to issue absurd orders to his army. The Führer bunker was located on the territory of the Reich Chancellery. It consisted of living rooms and several dozen offices for employees. Part of the bunker for Hitler himself was 10 meters underground, under a thick layer of concrete that could withstand even a direct hit from an air bomb. April 20th. Allied troops were already on the outskirts of Berlin, 17 kilometers from the bunker. Soon, the bombardment of the city's outskirts began. The fall of the Third Reich was a matter of time. On the eve of April 19th, Hitler received an offer to leave Berlin and go to southern Germany to continue the defense from there. Reich propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels recommended that the Führer should accept death in the capital if necessary. Hitler decided to stay in Berlin. The situation and mood in the Führer bunker were getting worse day by day. Hitler's mood changed dramatically. He got depressed, realizing what was awaiting him, and from time to time he started to break into fits of anger. Hitler was deeply hurt by reports of betrayal by his closest associates, Goering and Himmler, who were trying to negotiate with the enemy on behalf of party leaders. Enraged by the retreat of his troops, Hitler gave the order to shoot the military district commander, but no one would follow his order. April 22nd. Showing fanatical perseverance, Hitler didn't abandon attempts to change the course of hostilities. He ordered the deployment of the 12th Army so it would unite with the 9th Army, encircling the Soviet units from the west and south. Propaganda Minister Goebbels moved into the bunker with his family. In the heat of propaganda, he was also very active in trying to raise the spirit of the nation. Goebbels even organized the last edition of the Nazi newspaper from the bunker. It urged people not to panic, praised the exploits of the military, and condemned the capitulators. April 24th. The Allies finally encircled Berlin and advanced into the city center. By that time, the communication lines in the bunker were already cut off from the outside world. Information was collected only from BBC radio stations. From there, Hitler learned that on April 28th, Mussolini was caught trying to escape from Italy and shot after prolonged beatings. The bodies of the executed were hung in Milan's Piazzale Loreto. Hitler got suddenly horrified by the prospect of being caught alive by Russian soldiers and hanging in Moscow Square. April 29th. The general in charge of the defenses of the government quarter reported that the defense forces wouldn't last any more than 24 hours. Realizing the inevitable end, the Führer started doing things he wanted to do before death. He decided to marry his longtime companion, Eva Braun. To do this, an official was brought to the bunker who drew up all the documents. Hitler dictated his will, in which he left parting words for the Germans about careful observance of the laws of the race and ruthless opposition to international Jewry. In his will, he placed the responsibility for starting the war on the Jews and explained the reasons for his suicide. He arranged for the cremation of his body after death and bequeathed a collection of paintings to the museum of his hometown. He made new appointments to key positions in his party, hoping its new leaders would continue fighting. One of Hitler's faithful secretaries, Traudl Jung, wrote his will. Later, she confessed that she was fascinated by the Fuhrer and served him until the last minute. Jung would claim to have known nothing about the Holocaust and massacres during her work with Hitler. The things happening in the Fuhrer bunker were gaining momentum. In the upper part of the shelter, the officers, in anticipation of the approaching end, arranged a feast with music and alcohol from the stocks of the Reich Chancellery. No one greeted Hitler walking by anymore. Everyone smoked in his presence and had loud conversations. The Fuhrer wandered around the bunker in apathy, immersed in suicidal thoughts. April 30th. From 7 a.m., Soviet troops had been carrying out the strongest shelling of the government quarter, which was 200 meters from the Reich Chancellery. General Mohnke warned that the defenses would only be able to hold out for a few hours. Due to heavy shelling, Hitler couldn't go outside for the last time. His adjutant delivered several canisters of gasoline to the bunker. At 2 p.m., the Fuhrer had lunch with his secretaries and a nutritionist. Hitler was told that a plane was ready to take him to South America or Japan. Hitler refused to leave. At 3:20 p.m., he and his wife went to their apartments, and after 10 minutes, a shot was heard. A Batman reported to Reich Minister Bormann that Hitler had shot himself. He was found on a sofa with a bullet through his head, and next to him, there was Eva Braun, who had taken poison. The bodies were taken out into the garden, doused with gasoline, and set on fire.